All right, let's jump right into this explainer. We are going to demystify a term that, let's be honest, gets thrown around constantly these days. We're going to break down the buzzword narcissism, figure out the actual clinical reality behind it, and most importantly, arm you with the ultimate psychological shield to protect yourself.
So here's our agenda for today. 1. The truth about narcissism. 2. Spotting the red flags. 3. The 4 faces of narcissism. 4. The reality of narcissistic abuse. And finally, 5. The ultimate narcissist repellent.
Okay, part 1. The truth about narcissism and where it actually comes from. You know, the term traces all the way back to ancient Greece with the myth of Narcissus. He was this incredibly handsome guy who basically fell so deeply in love with his own reflection in a river that he couldn't pull himself away, and he literally drowned. Talk about a bad selfie gone wrong, right? Anyway, the concept obviously evolved over centuries. Fast forward to the 1970s in the US, and you see this massive cultural shift toward the self-esteem movement. And today? Well, we are squarely in the social media era. It is a modern culture that absolutely incentivizes and literally pays you for constant self-promotion and entitlement.
And because it is so heavily rewarded, it's way more common than you might think. Clinical psychologist Dr. Ramani notes that roughly 10 to 15%, let's just call it an average of 12% of people globally, exhibit noticeable narcissistic traits. To put that into perspective, if you are standing in a room of 10 people, the odds are that at least one of them is on the spectrum. You are absolutely encountering them in your day-to-day life.
But here's the crucial thing we have to distinguish. Having common narcissistic traits versus having actual narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD. That 12%, they have high levels of selfishness, entitlement, and variable empathy. They are, for sure, really unpleasant to deal with. But NPD itself is a rare, severe clinical condition that only affects 1 to 2% of the population. For it to be a true disorder, it has to cause significant socioeconomic dysfunction. It basically ruins their ability to function at a job, at school, or in fundamental social relationships.
Moving on to Section 2. Spotting the red flags, and exactly what to look for.
So, how do these clinical traits show up in the real world? Well, you might just assume narcissists are overly confident, but experts point out they actually suffer from incredibly variable self-esteem. When they get hit with what psychologists call a narcissistic wound, which could just be a perceived slight or even you not texting back fast enough, they can fly into these huge irrational rage episodes. They demand constant admiration, they hold everyone to totally impossible perfectionist standards, and they exploit people without a second thought. And here's a huge misconception. It's not that they have zero empathy. Actually, scratch that, they do have some, but it is dangerously inconsistent. You might catch them on a good day where they seem super compassionate, which is exactly why their behavior feels so deeply confusing.
But out of all these red flags, clinical experts totally agree on one thing. A deeply pathological sense of entitlement is the ultimate defining characteristic of a narcissist. It's that absolute expectation of special treatment. You know, that mindset of, why do I have to wait in line? Why isn't everything about me? That completely unwarranted sense of superiority is the core engine driving the rest of their toxic behavior.
Section 3. The 4 faces of narcissism. Let's categorize this behavior. Now, this is where it gets nuanced, because not all narcissists are just loud, arrogant blowhards. There are 4 distinct categories. First, you've got the classic grandiose. Loud, arrogant, desperate for the spotlight. Next is the malignant narcissist. These are the highly dangerous folks who will lie, cheat, and steal without an ounce of guilt. But the other 2 are way harder to spot. You have the covert narcissist, who is often secretive, sullen, and passive-aggressive, constantly playing the victim because they feel the world somehow missed their greatness. And finally, the communal narcissist. This is the person doing extreme public charity work, totally driven by social recognition, while lacking actual empathy behind closed doors. Let's zoom in on the grandiose type for a second. Dr. Ramani brilliantly calls this the Chanel suit of narcissism, because it's the classic, highly visible, flashy representation we all instantly expect. When someone just says the word narcissist, this is the exact image that pops into your head. But on the total opposite end of the spectrum, we have the communal narcissist. They are absolutely desperate for you to see them saving the world on their social media feeds. But it really reminds us of a fundamental truth. True philanthropy means doing good quietly. A communal narcissist is literally using vulnerable people as props for validation. If someone is broadcasting their charitable deeds but treats the people closest to them with cold indifference, yeah, that is a massive red flag.
Section 4. The reality of narcissistic abuse and the destruction it leaves behind.
We have to confront the severe toll these types take on the people around them. See, narcissists themselves rarely experience distress. Why would they? The world usually caters to their demands, and society often rewards their behavior with promotions and social status. It's the people around them who suffer the immense psychological harm. Narcissistic abuse is a chronic, exhausting pattern of neglect and invalidation. Victims are just left with intense self-doubt, anxiety, and this really profound sense of helplessness. And the primary tool they use to do this is gaslighting. Gaslighting isn't just lying. It's an insidious, slow, gradual manipulation tactic. It happens so slowly you barely even notice it, kind of like how you don't notice yourself growing taller. Over time, a gaslighter makes a completely healthy, confident person start questioning their own memory and sanity, eventually reducing them to a paranoid shell who just fully adopts the false reality of their abuser. Because narcissists view human relationships as totally convenient, like a cup they drink from when they're thirsty and toss aside when it's empty, we have to ask a really critical question about the love they offer. Are you drinking wine or just grape juice? It might look like the deep, complex wine of a genuine connection, but a lot of the time it's just the superficial grape juice of love, completely lacking any real depth, mutuality, or respect.
Because their version of love is entirely transactional. Treating a paid dinner or a gift as undeniable proof of devotion, experts actually suggest creating what they call a 10-day love contract early on in any relationship. Around that 10-day mark, you must clearly define for yourself what genuine emotional support looks like. If your emotional needs aren't being met, and they are only tossing you transactional gestures, you know exactly what you're dealing with.
Which brings us to Section 5, the ultimate narcissist repellent, and how to become completely immune.
So how do we navigate all of this? The ultimate narcissist repellent is just stepping completely into your own authenticity. When you are authentic, you are so self-possessed and emotionally regulated that their manipulative tricks literally bounce right off of you. Authentic people just do not personalize the toxic behavior of others. They don't let it get under their skin. When a narcissist tries to interrupt or show off, an authentic person doesn't get dragged into a shouting match. They just gracefully hold their ground.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? Here are 3 incredibly simple steps to protect yourself. First, pay attention to your body's safety signals. Your body is smart. If you feel tense or uneasy around someone, trust that physical reaction. Second, observe patterns of 3. If they do something disrespectful once, maybe it's a fluke. 3 times, that is a definitive pattern. And third, have the wisdom to just gracefully step away. You don't need a dramatic showdown. Just say, oh, look at the time, I need to go, and completely remove yourself from their toxic orbit. You really have to adopt this mindset, captured perfectly by Dr. Maya Angelou. When someone shows you who they really are the first time, believe them. Do not enable the narcissist. Do not make excuses for them, or rationalize their abuse, or stick around hoping they will magically develop deep empathy. Believe the reality they are showing you right now. And that brings us to our final thought for this explainer. As you go out and navigate your friendships, your relationships, and your workplace, you have a choice. Are you going to keep tolerating the toxic noise and enabling their behavior? Or are you going to do the hard, internal work to discover your authentic self, step entirely away from the drama, and become a narcissist's absolute worst nightmare? The choice is entirely yours.